Hi everybody, I'm Art and welcome to Ballers and Suits. So just to give you a little background about myself, I've been a lawyer in the Philippines for 10 years and a few years ago I transferred here in California to finish my Master's of Law degree at USC. Recently, I just passed the California bar, so I'm looking to practice law here and hopefully venture into sports law and entertainment law. So that's actually one of the reasons why I'm making this channel. I want to learn more about the field, at the same time, share my experiences and information with all of you. Hopefully, you'll find the content interesting, helpful, and entertaining. And I'll be having a lot of interviews with people in sports, entertainment, and law. At the same time, writing all about them, which you can find at the links below. So, for our first guest, we're actually very fortunate to have one of the people who I look up to in sports. He's not an athlete, he's a sports personality and famously known as the host of The Herd on FS1, Mr. Colin Cowherd. So, I actually met Colin a few months ago. My wife and I were having lunch at his restaurant, the Bruce Hall, at Hermosa Beach. And when we saw him, we approached him and we talked a few things about sports. And I mentioned to him that I'm planning to venture into sports law and entertainment law, and hopefully I can interview him someday. He was very game with it, so he gave me his contact details. And a few weeks ago, I hit him up for that interview. Fortunately and true enough, he responded and he kept his word and gave me that interview. So I'm very grateful for his support. And in this interview, we talked a lot about football, a few things about NIL, women's sports, USC, and that's it. So here it is, and hope you enjoy. Right. So I just want to thank you for your time today,
Yeah,
taking a few questions.
sure.
My first question is since I'm kind of trying to get into sports law practice and
Yeah,
maybe in the future try to make a athlete agency or a sports agency.
sure.
So and while I'm doing this, I of course have a lot of inspiration. For example, sports lawyers who are now in the industry, some of the big sports agencies right now, like Clutch is up and coming, competing with the best of them, like CAA and all the other agencies out there. And also, you being a person who's very knowledgeable in sports are some of the people who inspire me. So I just want to ask, like, when you were coming up as a sports broadcaster, who did you like look up to coming up, or was there a certain personality in the field or in another field that inspired you to do what you're doing right now?
There were several. I think when I was young, like 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, there was Howard Cosell. He was a very opinionated New York sportscaster. And then as I got older, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, it was Bob Costas, who I thought was really
Mhm.
erudite, really smart and funny. And then as I think I got into my career, there's other people that, Joe Buck is somebody that's really talented. I a lot of times, to be honest with you, it was an Oprah Winfrey or
Oh
the way
yeah.
Tiger Woods overcame. I tend to be somebody that I watch successful people. I have no problem borrowing tricks or tendencies of successful people. I think being a complete original is hard and sometimes overrated. McDonald's did not invent the hamburger. That's okay. They created a more efficient system to sell the hamburger. Um, and so I've had a lot of people that I have monitored and watched. I think ultimately you have to be yourself, and your instincts have to be yours. But of course, there's a lot of people I've watched and admired. To this day, there's lots of people I watch and admire.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a good way to look at it. Like I think people with charisma whether they're in a different field, like for example in comedy, all those late night shows, even though it's a totally different field there, I think you want to like get their charisma, also their style, and incorporate it to your own practice.
Yeah, there was when I Jason McIntyre is now on my show, and
Mhm.
when I brought him over to the network, I was trying to find a segment to use Jason on my show, a weekly segment. And one night I was watching MSNBC, and Brian Williams had a segment where he said, "Here's tomorrow's headlines." And they would get an early edition of the New York Times or Washington Post. And I thought, oh, I love that. You're getting the headline in the newspaper the night before. And so we created a segment called Tomorrow's Headlines Today. The difference is we make it up.
Yes.
It's very popular. People really like it. It's a good laugh. And so I borrowed sort of what they were doing, and I think that's okay. I've heard young broadcasters come up to me and say, "I listen to your analogies. I like the way you use metaphors and analogies," and I take it as a compliment every time.
Right. Sounds cool. Okay, moving on to another topic, specifically NIL. So NIL has been like a really big thing right now. A lot of high school students, college students are
Yes.
making a living out of their name, image, and likeness. Before this type of deals are tabooed, you can screw up your eligibility to play
Right.
if you get something out of different people. What do you think about the NIL, or how do you look at it? Do you think are you pro NIL, or do you think it's a good thing and it will eventually get better in the future?
Well, it was a little bit of a runaway train when it first arrived, but that was due to the NCAA not being prepared. It was discussed for years and years, so there was no excuse not being ready for it. I do think anybody should be compensated for the work they do, and especially college football, where young players are beating their bodies up.
Right.
They shouldn't, you could say, well, they're getting a free education. Certainly that has value, but what football players make now has far more than that. So the education is part of it, but I think being compensated at the highest levels possible for a Caleb Williams at USC is reasonable. I mean, Reggie Bush or a Tim Tebow or a Vince Young, Johnny Manziel. I mean, if you went to those towns or those neighboring towns during their heyday, there were Reggie Bush jerseys all over Los Angeles, and he didn't receive a penny for that.
Right.
So I don't think that's the American way. I think we compensate people regardless of age. I mean, you have 8-year-olds now that make money on YouTube. That's the American way. If you're talented and exhibit an ability to do something that garners interest, you should be compensated. So I'm for it. I do think there needs to be some regulations, like anything. Tech has regulations or laws. There's nothing wrong with guardrails. So boosters just aren't throwing money, and there's bidding wars for high schoolers. But there's regulations on our roads. You drive, there's the school zone regulation, there's the freeway speed, there's the neighborhood speed. So everything has regulations.
Right.
Wall Street, Main Street, doesn't matter. So, and I think we're getting there. I think it was a little wild, wild west for the first 6 to 8 months, but we're getting there slowly but surely.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. That's a good point, especially like the football players like sacrifice a lot, and they should get like something for what they do. Actually, just to share you a little point that's really expanding right now, because I work for an immigration law firm, and based on immigration rules, international students who are here in the U.S. cannot earn or work unless it's authorized by the school. In effect, they can't be part of NIL deals because it's prohibited for international students on an F1 visa to work or earn money unless it's authorized by the school. So that's actually a bit of an issue that a lot of international students are clamoring about because they can't engage in NIL deals because it's not permitted by immigration rules for international students.
Well, the good news is, though, a school could approve it.
Mhm.
And I think in any marketplace, if you bring unique talent in and you don't approve it, then that athlete will go to another school.
Right.
So, the marketplace usually dictates, creates inertia and its own momentum.
Mhm.
So if you have talent, somebody is always willing to pay for it. And so if an international student comes from anywhere, Cambodia, and they're a great swimmer, and UCLA says, we're not going to pay you, Rutgers could say, we will pay you. And so, there's always a marketplace for talented people.
Right, right. Okay, moving on to the next topic, women in sports. So right now, as far as I see it, there are a lot of women involved already in the sports arena. A lot of lawyers who are women in sports. There are a lot of agents also in the sports industry right now. And as we saw in the last NCAA finals game, the Iowa versus LSU, I think it's the biggest women's college basketball game that was viewed. And we had some good matchups there also. So now that women's sports is getting bigger and more people are getting more involved, they think there's a lot of potential in women's sports. And what do you think will be the next step for them in order to uh, become bigger and maybe in effect get the salaries and compensations they deserve?
Well, deserves a tricky word because
Mhm.
you get what the marketplace affords you. The WNBA was largely it wasn't profitable for years, and so the NBA carried it for years and years. They would not have been able to play in nicer arenas. They subsidized it, but they felt that it was important for women, um, a broader audience. Um, Women will never make what the men do, probably because the NBA is the highest form of basketball. But I will say women's basketball, and I've said this multiple times over the last decade, no sport, men or women's sport, in the world has improved more than women's basketball over the last decade to 15 years. I could show you video of Dr. J in 1970 doing things that would be phenomenal today. But if I showed you women's basketball in 1975, it doesn't even look like women's basketball today. They're so much more athletic. The coaching's better. The nutrition's better. They have more money. The women's college basketball and professional basketball is so nimble and twitchy and athletic and well coached and competitive and passionate. And it's also a sport in which women have now been for 20 years now, 15, 20 years, been encouraged and financially supported. And that wasn't necessarily the case 30 years ago, right? There were a lot of meatheads and blockheads that did not encourage women to be athletes. So women are going to increasingly get better ratings, and the American public watches what is good. It doesn't matter what it is. Serena Williams was great. Her ratings often beat men. The United States women's national team, soccer team, is fantastic. Their ratings often compete with men. So the country has a history of we watch what's really good. People were outraged when women initially fought on UFC cards. Now their fights are staggeringly popular. So as women's basketball just increases in quality, you're going to see bigger contracts, more support. I think Toronto's going to get a WNBA team here, and the game's good. There's a reason you don't have to convince people. People will find good quality. It could be a restaurant in your neighborhood. It could be a hospital in your county, or it could be a sport on any platform. If something's good, it could be a TikTok account. If somebody's funny or gifted, people will find it.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, good points right there. Thank you. And one of my last questions is regarding agency. So I'm just gonna relate it to agency law.
Sure.
So when it comes to principal and agency relationship, the agent acts for the principal's benefit, and in that relationship, the principal has control on how the agent will act. So, with the case of one of my favorite players, Lamar Jackson, do you think he would have gotten a better deal if he had an agent to begin with? And the second question to that is, since he was able to finish his deal and get his money, do you think a lot of players in the future will go that route and without an agent and negotiate themselves? Because like in the NBA, I haven't heard of like a superstar not having an agent and negotiating his own deal. So
Yeah.
what do you think of that situation?
It may create a little bit of momentum or inertia. I think there's always been players who want to negotiate their own deals. Um, there's an old saying I was told years ago: "Don't jump over a $20 bill to grab a $5 bill." You're better off paying an agent because this is what they do for a living. The Lamar Jackson deal, he probably got 90% of the money or 95% of the money he would have gotten otherwise. But it was very noisy. It was very unorthodox and clunky, and feelings were hurt. And that's why you hire an agent to just smooth and groove the process. I think he probably got close to the same money. But Kawhi Leonard is not overly trusting. He uses family members. Lamar Jackson's not overly trusting. I understand that. I mean, I've had multiple agents. I like some, I don't like others. So, I mean, listen, when you're talking about 175 to 200 million, what's another $10 million? I think Lamar felt confident that he could get there his way. But I think I've had agents in my career, not because I necessarily wanted them, I needed them. They got rid of potential argumentative situations with my bosses or my owners that I just didn't think I wanted to be in conflict with management. I'd just rather do my job, which is create content, and let somebody else, worry about the negotiations. So I've always had agents, some better than others, but I'm sure somebody will copy it, but it wouldn't be the first. It's like some people sell their home for sale by owner. There's nothing wrong with that. In a really hot market, you can do that. I would rather pay somebody 4 or 5% and just sell the house for me. Take the pictures, do the work. It's like you can change your oil or you can go to Jiffy Lube.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with either, but I got to a point in my life where I made enough money or it didn't make any sense to waste 3 hours changing my oil. I just rather have somebody else do it and I can do my job. So you can sell your house by yourself. There's put a sign out. I don't think it's quite as effective. But again, there's good real estate agents and mediocre real estate agents. There's good professional sports agents and average ones. And in the end, Baltimore wanted Lamar. Lamar wanted to stay in Baltimore. Everybody won, but it was a little noisier. It got a little petty. And I don't think that's good for anybody, Ravens or Lamar.
Yeah. Well, one thing's for sure, it wasn't good for the fans. We get emotional with that stuff.
Well, of course.
We get affected.
We want our stars to be ready to go. So, listen, you're going into a field where there's lots of opportunities. It's very competitive, but I'm sure if you love it as much as I like sportscasting, you'll flourish.
Right. That's a good point. Okay, so we're about to end. I just have like some quick questions
Sure.
that you can answer. Who would be your two teams to go to the Super Bowl for this upcoming season?
I think Philadelphia is really, really good. I do worry because Jalen Hurts runs the ball so much about his health, but I think they're really, really good.
Right.
I think Jacksonville's going to surprise people. I think it's going to come down to the Chiefs, the Bengals, and the Jaguars.
Wow.
Jaguars are in a really bad division, so they're probably going to get a number 1 or 2 seed. They're going to get home games. I think Kansas City's schedule is harder. Plus, it's hard to repeat. You win a Super Bowl, everybody gets a TV commercial, everybody gets a book or a free car. It can be distracting. Cincinnati, Jacksonville, Kansas City. Keep your eye on the Chargers. And then I think in the NFC, I think San Francisco and Philadelphia are very, very good. If Dallas stays healthy, I think they can be really interesting. And Seattle, they've had back-to-back great drafts. They're young. They drafted another running back that I like out of UCLA, Zach Charbonnet. So I think he'll be the rookie of the year potentially in the NFC, offensive rookie of the year. So there's five. I always call it a Super Bowl bubble. There's always like 6 or 7 teams I think are in the bubble, and a lot of that is just who's healthy.
Right.
I mean, really, Kansas City at the end and Philadelphia, even though both the quarterbacks were banged up, the teams were healthy.
Right.
And this is a sport with a regulated level of violence, and so. I mean, you see it before a UFC card. Somebody will drop out. Somebody's hurt, like in training. So in football, a lot of it is who's really talented and who's really healthy. And so that's why it's so hard to predict.
That's right. Next would be best fit for Caleb Williams when he gets drafted. Best fit team for him, do you think?
Well, he's going to be great anywhere.
Anywhere.
Whoever has the number 1 pick, if they have a chance to get him, they're not going to trade down. So he's that kind of player.
Right.
My guess is I think it would be fascinating if Arizona got that pick. I would move off Kyler Murray and move Kyler Murray. I think Caleb's that kind of athlete. So, and he's mature, where Kyler Murray's talented, but you question his commitment and his maturity. So Arizona's the one that I think is most intriguing because they have a quarterback when healthy, and what decision would they make? For me as a sportscaster, that would be the most compelling storyline.
Nice. Actually, I was thinking of the same team also, and another team I was thinking of is Denver. If it doesn't work out with Russ, maybe.
But I think they'll be too good. They'll be too good to be in the top 5 or 6 draft picks. The problem is you're going to have to give up so much to get Caleb Williams. So it's going to be one of the top 3 teams. And I think Arizona is going to be bad. I think Tampa is going to be really bad. And keep your eye on the Colts. If they're awful and Anthony Richardson doesn't look like the guy, they may draft another quarterback.
Right. I have to stick with another USC question. Over or under Bronny James 10 points, over or under a game?
Oh no, I think he'll be a 15, 16 point a game player. I think Andy Enfield's a good coach. Also, he has really made big jumps over the last 3 years. So, I mean, 3 years ago, he wasn't close to his players. So, he's obviously a smart kid because of his dad. So I think he's one of those kids that you'll see big jumps in improvement, like big major jumps. So, I mean, I heard a year ago, people thought he was a late first round pick. Now he's a lottery pick. So I think he'll be fine. I don't know if he's a dominant scorer, but he's a very good athlete.
Right. Second to the last, cocktail of choice while watching a game.
Well, I am having right now, it's Sunday afternoon, I'm having a club soda, a little bit of gin, little orange juice, just a small one, very light pour. It's my first cocktail in 3 days because I try not to drink while I'm watching sports because I want to kind of zone in and write notes.
Okay.
So, plus my wife's out of town, and so when she's not here, I don't really drink. So this is, I did it because I was very nervous for this interview, so I wanted to take the edge off for this interview.
Okay. Actually, I asked that question because during your shows, I hear a lot about your cocktails, so just wanted to know what it was. And last one would be, what would be your advice for someone who wants to work in sports, whether broadcast, law, agency, athlete management? What's your advice?
Well, it's competitive, so don't get discouraged if things don't go your way in the first 6 months, year, 2 years. A lot of people closed doors. There were opportunities taken. I thought I had. So, don't get discouraged. Work really hard. I always say you can lubricate society or agitate it. Get along with people, help others, but also take care of yourself and just don't get discouraged. Don't get your head down. How old are you now?
I'm 36.
All right. You got a
Yeah.
long tarmac, 36, 46, 56. Find something, find your joy, find something that makes you happy, pursue it. Don't get down on yourself, and enjoy it. There'll be an opening. And by the way, somebody told me this years ago, outline your life in pencil, not pen. Be willing to erase stuff. You never know the opportunity that's going to happen. So don't be tunnel vision. If somebody offers you something and you're like, you know what? That's a good opportunity. Go for it.
That's some good advice right there. So yeah, those were all my questions. Thank you very much, Colin, and I'll catch you more in the herd when I
All right.
when I,
Thank
when I
you.
got back. So that was Colin Cowherd, and I hope you enjoyed the first episode of Ballers in Suits. Again, thank you to Colin. Very grateful for his insights about NIL, NFL, women's sports, and contract issues on Lamar Jackson in relation to agency law and contract law. And as you can see, it involved a lot of strategy and getting the deal done without an agent, which is not normal in sports today, but he got it done. And I think the most important takeaway here was the advice that he gave in the end, that if you want to get into sports or in the industry, you can't get discouraged. A lot of factors can pull you down. It won't work your way, but as long as you be yourself, you keep on working on what you have, then eventually things will work out and you'll have your moment and you should capitalize on that. So again, that's it for Ballers in Suits, and we'll see you in the next episode. Let's get it.